fear is kind of a natural reaction to anybody when they're put in the kinds of situations you have heard these gentlemen describe. And what I'd like to ask them, and I'll start with Brian, come back across here real quickly, is did you experience such fear, and then how'd you cope with it? Because you had to do something. So in the situation that you were in. Brian?
I guess the way I would describe it is I was with an artillery unit in Germany. Battery commander called me in and said, Brian, I've got good news and bad news. And I said, well, give me the good news first. He said, you're safety officer tomorrow. And that meant I didn't get to go to the club that night and have a beer. The bad news was that I was on orders to Vietnam, and I would say that that was when anxiety, concern started to show the more intense side, which would be called fear. The fear went up a notch when the plane lands in Vietnam and suddenly you're there. It goes up another notch when you go up country and report eventually to your unit and you realize that inside the barbed wire is a friendly unit and outside is hostile territory. Everybody that was inside the wire, and probably everybody that was outside, was experiencing a very similar emotion called fear. And the name of the game is to make it a motivator and make it work for you. It certainly heightens your senses, makes you incredibly aware and observant. And I guess, you know, when you step back and reflect, rather than let the emotion overpower you and dictate to you, you have to figure out a way to make it work the other way around. You know, and I thought fear was pretty manageable until up on the fire base, and then fear turns to pucker factor, and then there's a few other things that happen, and it gets turned up another notch. But you've basically already learned the response. It's, okay, I'm still here. What do we do next? And was very fortunate that I was never touched by the enemy until the last day before I was evacuated, so that I was always able to have pretty much whatever I could do on initiative to respond, I was able to do.
Okay. Joe, do you want to add anything?
You have to be able to control your fear, and the best way to do that is to prepare yourself in your unit with as much training as you can before you go into combat, so that and that will reduce the fear to a certain extent. But there's always fear of the unknown. But the more you know about your enemy and about the situation is a way to control that fear. Being young and invincible, like most of us feel like we are when we're young, that helped me on my first tour also. I didn't think there was a bullet meant for me, so I think that's important too. That you have to be cautious, but you're a leader and you have to lead by your own example. You lead from the front. At Fort Benning, the patch says "Follow me," the patch that we wear on our right shoulder as a student. And that's the way they trained us to lead our troops.
Thank you. West, anything you want to add?
Yes. I think basically we all handle fear based on our, I guess, maybe mental makeup. Like an optimist is going to handle it a whole lot better than a pessimist. And what we're really saying there is an optimist, like Joe just says, there's no bullet made for me. I'm going to get through it. A pessimist, on the other hand, And I also recognize that we kind of fluctuate, and I address this in my book on Courage and Fear, that one person can kind of move through the two. You optimist the majority of the time, but there comes those times when the pessimist attitude takes over. You've had enough. If you're really weak, you're worn down, you've been out there too long, been too involved, kind of tends to work with you. But when it comes to handling fear, in my experience, any time that I'm actively involved in a firefight, fear doesn't bother me because I don't think about it. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next, what needs to be done. When fear bothered me in combat, like in the Korean War, sitting on the line at night, a couple of nights after a big fight, and you really know they're going to hit you this night, that's fear because you're dreading what you think's going to happen and what the cost has been in the past. Once the fight starts, in my experience, again, your mind is thinking about what needs to be done, so there's no room for fear. You don't, I guess maybe fear, if some really brainy guy broke it down, there would still be somewhere up there, but as long as what needs to be done and the process of planning that takes over, it kind of pushes fear to the backside. And we know fear not just in firefights and combat, but in our civilian life, in our sports activities. A lot of occasions to experience fear. And handling fear is very important. Like if you're facing a life or death situation and your mind goes blank, you're frozen with fear, you're dead. Compared to handling it, to thinking about what needs to be done, what do I need to do next, 1, 2, 3, doing those things pushes fear to the side and you get through it. But that's something we all are faced with and we're all are familiar with it and we all handle it in our ways. But you got to think about it.